had a weekly pulse check where we asked people to score their well-being. We really realised, oh my God, we've gone from a handful of physical workplaces to now 200 workplaces where the leadership task, was something we hadn't experienced before.
I think I want to work for you now.
Oh, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, Damian, do you have two vacancies? Well, hello and welcome to The Stream, an unscripted, unedited, free-flowing conversation featuring guests who reject the status quo with a bias for action in the world of water and beyond. My name's Tom Freyberg. I'm an environmental journalist and content creator specializing in water.
And my name is Will Sarney. I'm a water strategy consultant doing my part to solve wicked water problems.
And don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. And today we're delighted to welcome Damian Wells, who's the CEO of an Australian utility called Coliban Water. And in the next half an hour, you're going to hear key lessons from Damian in terms of rolling out his digital meters as part of a digital utility strategy. You're going to hear how he's been leading and communicating with a largely decentralized workforce throughout the pandemic last year. We're going to move on to the importance of mental health and well-being during lockdowns, and then we're going to come on to hear from a pretty serious accident that Damian had on his mountain bike and how he bounced back and is raring to go. So Damian, thanks for joining us. It's early in the morning there, late in the night here in the UK, and afternoon time in the US for Will. So Damian, welcome, and good to see you. How are you?
G'day, Tom. G'day, Will. Yeah, going very well. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Well, thanks for joining. What time is it there, by the way? I think you're the only one in the office. It must be pretty...
Yeah, no, it's about 8:15 in the morning. All good. I snuck in early to get organised as I've been in the office for a while, and I haven't been in the office very much at all the past 10 months. So it was a bit different coming into the office. But we're starting to have some of the restrictions relaxed in Victoria. And yesterday there was actually an announcement that the government has authorised up to 75% of workforces to come back into the office, which is a huge milestone for this part of Australia, which we had a big lockdown last year, and now we've really come out the other side with barely any cases of coronavirus in the whole nation, which has been just incredible.
That's amazing. So do you anticipate your workforce is coming back in the kind of next few weeks then? More people back in the office?
We've got 25% of our people back in the office now. That's been the case for a couple of weeks. We've reopened our front counter for customer walk-ins, and in the next probably 2 to 4 weeks, we'll be up to that, probably somewhere around that 70% of staff back in the office, which seems just remarkable and seems like a foreign concept, even though it's only been 9 or 10 months of remote working.
Right. It's going to seem a bit of an alien concept, I think, people getting back into the swing of things. But so you mentioned there in terms of the state of Victoria, we know a lot of our listeners are in Europe and the US, so perhaps give some kind of context of where Coliban and Victoria is in Australia, the size of the operation to start with, if you can, that'd be great.
Yeah, no worries. So I think most people know the shape of Australia down under, but Victoria is in the southeast corner of Australia, and it's a lot of people know of Melbourne. Melbourne is Victoria's capital. Coliban Water is central Victoria, so Victoria is the state, and central Victoria is where Coliban operates from. Our biggest service centre is the town, the city of Bendigo, which is a population of about 100,000, but our region is very very large. In fact, we stretch from the Great Dividing Range, which is the southern edge of the Murray-Darling Basin, up to the River Murray, and that's actually a huge part of the state. So just to give people a sense of it, to drive in a vehicle from the southern edge of our area to the northern edge, it's the best part of 4 hours drive.
Decent. So in terms of your background then to become the CEO, am I right in saying did you do a stint in the regulator I know from in terms of the river basin management, give us a quick kind of run through whistle stop tour, if you will, just to give us some context.
Yeah, no worries. So I studied environmental management. I started in a water quality role. I started in catchment management. I spent a lot of my time. Then I did a stint in a rural water corporation delivering irrigation water as an operations manager. Then I was a chief executive of a catchment management authority where we were very focused on river health, environmental management, landscape restoration. And from there, I moved into the Environment Protection Authority in Victoria, so Victoria's environmental regulator. And I learnt a lot in that role about environmental regulation, the art and the science of behaviour change, and trying to cast that bigger shadow to have people be compliant, but ideally get far beyond compliance to really think about environmental stewardship and their role in the catchments in which they operate. And this role that I'm in at Coliban Water as the managing director is really, for me, it's probably what I've described to many as my dream job. I live in Bendigo. I love this community. I love this area. I love this region, and to play a leadership role in water, for purpose organisation, for me, I saw as a huge opportunity, and I was lucky enough to get this job about 14 months ago. So still very much new in the role, on a steep learning curve, but having a lot of fun, and we've got a great crew.
Hey, Damian, it seems like that your experience is a significant asset in terms of, your new role in managing the utility, the ability to understand watershed issues in terms of quantity, environmental quality issues, and connect that to the tap and the consumer is, I would say, somewhat unusual in the utility sector, at least here in the US.
Yeah, look, it probably is, and I think there is a lot of leadership that is in the water sector that's come up through that engineering side and into the senior roles, and I find those people absolutely amazing, and the depth of knowledge they bring to the utility sector is incredible. I learn a lot from them. Certainly, I hope what I can bring is that broader landscape context. I've got a lot to learn on the utility side, and I'm really trying to be a great student of that at the moment. But I do feel that some of those other experiences can add significant value, because the community wants to see water utilities play a bigger game. The community wants to see us play a role as an environmental steward in the catchments in which we operate. We're here for the long run. We harvest, we store, we treat water, we discharge to waterways. This term of wastewater, we've got to get that out of the lexicon and really start seeing the value in the entire water cycle that we're the custodians for. And in central Victoria, where we are, a really important piece of context is that Bendigo was founded on the gold rush of the 1850s. It was not founded, like many of our towns, on a highly reliable water source for agriculture or for settlement. And so for us, we are the canaries in the coal mine for climate change in this state, because a lot of our climate adaptation is involving pumps and pipes. We've really got to ramp up big time on the water sensitive urban design and the demand management side. The challenges that we're facing are expressing right now in the inflows in our storages that since 1975 have dropped by about 50%. So if people are talking about these inflow challenges and climate change as something that will be confronted with in the future, it's right here, right now, and it's bending our minds, particularly in the post-COVID world, where we call them in our region. People talk about sea change, we talk about tree change, and so people want the tree change. They want to come to regional Victoria to live, for the lifestyle, for the slightly slower life, get out of the traffic, all of that. So we will see the current 1.9% population growth probably nudge up over to, we've got big precinct planning for growth in our region. So that's really going to push us to make sure we can continue to support our community with, with prosperous communities and great lifestyles.
Well, it's
So that's driving
interesting.
a lot of innovation then. Sorry, Tom.
Particularly on that that whole of water cycle management. I know everyone's talking about it, and we certainly are. And I think it's fair to say we're still in the early stages of really doing some sense making about what those big opportunities are. But the weight of the challenge means that we will, what do they say? Necessity, the mother of all invention. We will really push for solutions.
To me, it sounds you repeat the word community quite often when you talk about your role at Coliban and even kind of living in the area. I think that's quite important, the role of the utility in the community. I also thought it was interesting how, as part of your backstory, kind of doing a stint within the regulator and then coming to the utility, and sometimes those two parties can be at loggerheads with each other, right? And now you've almost jumped across to the other side of the table from the regulator to being the supplier, which I thought was interesting. But when we last caught up, Damon, you said you've kind of been in the weeds with this digital meter program. So I think there's lots we can talk about here in terms of how that tied into the digital strategy and the business strategy of the utility, kind of lessons learned so far. So give us a bit of context onto the kind of the why you're doing this, perhaps the investment and the scale, and then we can chat a bit more on that.
Yeah, no worries, Tom. Well, we've got two pretty big digital things running at the moment, and one of the big ones for 2020 for Coliban Water was the implementation of a new billing system, and that was heavy. I started in my role, and there'd been a lot of planning done, and we were not far off going live at that time. But I think talking about going live with a new billing system is one thing. Actually pushing the button and going live, I think, is quite different. And so we actually took stock on where that project was at, and we did some further user acceptance testing rounds. We ended up running out to 8 or 9 rounds of user acceptance testing for our billing process, our billing project. As we had COVID hit Australia, and in Australia, Victoria was, I guess, for want of a better term, the sort of the epicenter, if you like, and it's very minor compared to what the US and Europe and everywhere else is experiencing. But it was where the first outbreak really took hold in significant scale. And we were all geared up to train everybody in person, in an actual room. And then we had to send everyone home, and we had to do user acceptance testing, data migration rounds, a whole heap of training, all remotely for the new billing system. And that was super difficult for us. And that really did challenge us in our leadership. It challenged us in how we managed our workforce well-being, how we managed our relationship with the vendor. And we had some pretty significant reflections after we went live. We went live on the 1st of July 2020 with the new billing system. And as most people can appreciate who've done these projects, going live is a big deal. And that first 3 to 6 months of going live, you're still finding new issues, getting fixes implemented, implementing short-term workarounds. We found ourselves explaining to some of our customers why they were getting incorrect bills. That can cause reputation harm, that can bring stress. We have, through the whole of the coronavirus period and working from home, we had a weekly pulse check where we asked people to score their well-being. We saw some pretty bad results in our workforce well-being pulse checks, and we were pretty worried about our people. And we, at times, we really realised, oh my God, we've gone from a handful of physical workplaces to now 200 workplaces where the leadership task, was something we hadn't experienced before. It was significantly ramped up in the sense of sure people were properly connected with their teams as managers and leaders, that you really had an insight into how people were going, the hours they were working, the workload they were juggling. And also we realized that it had to be first and foremost about happy and healthy households, because until we had happy and healthy households, people can't bring their best to work. And we were putting a bit too much on from the work perspective, and people were juggling kids in lockdown, homeschooling. Some people had partners who'd lost jobs, and we really had to flip the focus to well-being. And I've got to say, we are not the font of all knowledge on this. We've got more work to do.
Hey, Damian, you're one of the few people in your position that, in my experience, has talked about the well-being aspect of the workforce. There's a lot of talk about digital transformation, and we're working remotely, and we have all these technologies. And you really seem to be uniquely focused on the well-being aspect of your team, and investing in that proactively and monitoring that on a very close real-time basis to ensure that you deliver the product and services that you're charged with delivering, and also can go through this digital transformation during a stressful time. So I really applaud that. I just find it fascinating to hear. And going back to how Tom opened it, it's about what are the lessons learned. Well, for me, and listening to you talk, that's one of the big ones.
We've often said in the past that it's kind of how leaders act during a crisis is a litmus test of leadership and morality. And I think from what you just described, Damian, you didn't talk about, like we all said, the data or the results from even the digital meters. You didn't even mention the technology. It came down to the kind of the challenges and how you kind of helped the decentralized workforce during that pandemic. So I think that comes through quite clearly. So what advice or tips would you give then? Because you clearly did this pulse check, as you called it, to find out kind of the state of well-being of your employees. So what did you learn from that, and what did you implement that you found worked really well to help perhaps give people a boost during that time?
Yeah, look, we are still on that journey, I've got to say, and I think it is a job for life for all leaders, because every operating environment is so dynamic, and there's so many different forces coming in at different times. But just so that people understand how we did the pulse check. So pulse check's super simple process, because a lot of people hate doing surveys. A lot of surveys coming at them. And so it was basically score yourself out of 5. 5 is I am on top of the world, kicking goals, happy days. 1 is, I'm really in a hole, not going well, and I'm not able to be my best, and it's, my well-being is not good, and it's impacting my ability not just to do my job, but to actually be effective in my life. So we had scores that hovered in the the 3.4, 3.5 sort of area. So you go, oh gee, is that very good or not? And we found it a little bit hard to read. So then we introduced a free text field where people could just go put some comments in, and that helped us tune into, if someone wanted to share a bit more, you could go, oh, okay, so that thing there seems to be coming through as a theme. So maybe we can ask more questions about that and see if that's an issue for others. But we didn't ever want to make it too onerous. We got very high participation rates. So we've got about 200 people, and we were getting participation rates in that survey in the order of about 120 or so a lot of the time. What we did find was that well-being actually also tracked the coronavirus journey. So as lockdowns went, deeper and stronger, well-being actually went down because, I've got 2 kids at home. My wife and I were, my wife has a business. She's a very busy businesswoman. I'm busy with my work. Then we had our 2 kids at home for, I think they were at school for 5 weeks over the period of about 5 months. So they were at home doing school. So they're on their calls doing schoolwork. We're trying to run our businesses. And, that was stressful for us in our household. So, our household is no different to everybody else's household. And in fact, I would, we've probably got it pretty easy in our household. So what we really realised was, it was tracking the coronavirus, but we also realised there were some significant issues attributed to our billing system, our go live period. And then we also got feedback through another broader survey where we realised what was happening was there were so many video calls being scheduled internally, externally, and people were literally staring at the screen on video calls for some people nearly the whole day. And then the day would end, and then they get the kids off to bed, and then they're coming back to their computer to get on top of emails, to do work, to write reports, and their day was never ending. They were stuck in this house with screen and pressure. And so what we did, one of the responses is we have implemented a noon to 1:30 p.m. every day. It's a blackout period. No one is allowed to call an internal meeting in that time. On Tuesday afternoons, from noon for the rest of the day on a Tuesday afternoon, no one is allowed to call an internal meeting. And so that's our attempt at giving full authorized environment for people to do some of that stuff, to knock over those emails, to make those calls, so that after they finish for the normal day, they're not coming back to then start work, if you like. But I think it's also trying to send a signal to our people about, can we break some of this meeting culture thing that potentially isn't necessary for everything? Can we just pick up the phone, have the conversation, get it done? The other thing is, I think the art of chairing a meeting is highly underrated, and it's not always well executed. And so I think the art of chairing a meeting, have a really clear agenda, have really clear papers, give the chair the full authorization to control the meeting to the times allotted, check the temperature of the room. If you need more time on the item, check, because that's going to have to come off other bits on the agenda. Keep it to time. Do you need an hour and a half for the meeting, or can you knock it over in 50 minutes? The other thing we found was scheduling meetings, super admin, super basic, but have the meeting finish at 10 minutes to the hour. Give people a chance to stand up, get a coffee, go to the toilet, stuff like that. So there's some of the
basics,
things,
right? I mean, I think there's value to be had for 45-minute meetings. I mean, I think can you remember during the start in March, it was kind of back to back to back, where telephone calls tended to shift to video conferencing calls. And this phrase came out about Zoom fatigue. And I mean, I know it's in the grand scheme of things, it's quite a first world problem, considering some of the toll that the pandemic's taking. But still, I think that's really solid advice. And I love the fact that you had these blackouts, did you call them? These virtual blackouts for time being. So, and Will, what do you think? Virtual blackouts?
Oh, I think it's brilliant. I was smiling because, we have a client that ends the meeting, 5 to 10 minutes before the hour. And it bakes in that, period to, do what you got to do, get up and walk around, just kind of reflect a little bit, decompress, and then start again, as opposed to I'm packing my time with back-to-back video calls, and, for me, Damian, this is reinforcing that, well-being could be, just sort of a tagline and sending out surveys, but learning from that and really adjusting how you work and being not just more productive, but more thoughtful on the human side. Again, I'm really impressed with.
The other thing
but wait,
sorry,
Damian, I think I want to work for you now.
Oh, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, Damian, do you have two vacancies?
Yeah.
Oh, well,
we're good to go.
What do they say? Trust and verify. You need to ask, you need to do your own survey of our workforce to see if in fact I'm telling the truth. But look, I think, one of the other things we said to people, particularly with kids, was, in that mid part of the day, I know in our household, we're doing schoolwork in the morning, so knock it over, kids, get it done. And then in that mid part of the day, if you need to get out, get the kids on the scooters or the bikes or whatever, just get out and do it and get yourself moving. There's a great article I just saw this morning on Harvard Business Review about how the brain works differently when you're walking or cycling or out and about, and how so many people come up with the big ideas when they're doing those things. And I know for me, riding bikes, running, I often say, I do my best work, when I'm out and about. So those kinds of things, they are important. And, for those of people that are on Strava, the exercise app, there's a lot of people in Coliban Water who are on Strava, and we follow each other. And I can see, he did a 40K bike ride in the middle of the day. And what can I do? I give him kudos. I like it. So that stuff's okay, because we know people are hard workers. We know people want to do work. So let's not micromanage about counting minutes and stuff when we know whether people are producing. But
it's based on results, not attendance, isn't it? I think some bosses, if they saw their employees doing a 40K ride, may kind of have umbrage with that, but you're kind of fully encouraging it and probably maybe even getting competitive, right? With that, we follow each other on Strava, so I see some of your rides. There's some impressive distances you're banging out. So let's you've done a good job for us, David. You've segued well to the bike interview. I mean, a natural. So first of all, I think we should just geek out a bit on bikes. What is it that you ride, right? Because I need to have a serious upgrade. I've only got a hardtail, so I'm on the market for a dual suspension. Some people have suggested an e-bike. I'm not convinced yet to kind of go to the dark side. I've heard once you've kind of jumped on an e-bike, there's no going back manual. So what is it that you ride these days?
Well, I ride a Specialized stump jumper mountain bike, which is a dual suspension bike.
Nice.
And I love what Specialized do. I'm not a sponsored athlete. I wish I was. But I love what they do, always have. They've been innovators in mountain bikes since the very, very start. They're always about 2 years ahead of all the other brands, in my opinion. But so I love what they do. There's a great local bike shop here that is super big on Specialized and has a big, strong following. And I also ride a gravel bike, which I actually bought after I had my accident because I just thought that would just mix up the riding a bit. But in the pandemic, I realized I have a garage full of bikes. And as you know, there's a worldwide shortage on bikes at the moment. You cannot get. And so I thought, here's an opportunity. I'm going to clean up the garage, make some space, free up a little bit of cash as well to contribute to the next steed. And so I sold about 5 bikes in the pandemic. And it was good, and it was therapeutic because it gave me more room. And so now I only have 2 bikes, one gravel bike, which is actually a Norco, and a Specialized bike. But I love the gravel bike. So gravel bikes, for those that don't know, they look like a road bike, but they've actually got fat tires.
Thicker tires, yeah.
Actually ride gravel roads and a bit of rough stuff.
Oh,
but
right.
in a very, it's about efficient, fast off-road riding, not mountain biking, jumping, downhilling, crazy climbing stuff. It's more about nice gravel roads at a good, reasonable clip.
Specialized, my brother had a Specialized hard rock when we were growing up. That was a pretty decent bike. Only front forks growing up in the country. But for me, biking with the gyms being shut, parks being shut, pretty much everything being shut in the UK, has been my one kind of go-to sport. Thankfully, we live a stone's throw from the South Downs, so I can get up and do anything up to about a 20 miler, and there's some pretty good hills as well. So yeah, having access to the bike in the South Downs has kind of been my savior. But you mentioned the accident then when you were just talking, right? So I mean, we haven't got a picture, but in the past, I think you sent it to me with the halo. It's pretty a pretty gnarly fall, as you would call it in Australia, right? Talk us through how that happened, because I think the bounce back is a really interesting story as well.
Yeah, so it was actually 4 days before I was meant to start this job as Coliban Water Managing Director. So I
good timing then. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I snagged the dream job that I always wanted, being MD at Coliban Water. I negotiated a start date which enabled me to have 1 week off in between jobs. And I thought, oh, the perfect crime. I'm going to sneak out on a Tuesday afternoon on my week off, and I'm going to have a great ride. We're at the local bike park, only 15 Ks from home, 34 Ks of purpose-built mountain bike trails, magic. And basically, I just had a stack, and I was riding with a mate of mine, and we were going at pace through a particular section, trying to tie some big gaps into jumps, and I just got it wrong. And you know, I've been riding for a long time. You know, since BMX as a kid, I've always been on 2 wheels, motorbikes across the Western Australian desert for a month. You know, I've always been on 2 wheels. So, you know, certainly, whilst I'm certainly not an expert, I'm not a novice mountain biker, right? But I had this stack, and I've had lots of stacks, but this one it just didn't go right. I heard something click in my neck. I actually stood up after the crash, and I genuinely felt like my head was going to fall off. And I just grabbed my head, and I held my head, and I said to my mate who was with me, I said, I think my head's going to fall off, and I just got to lie down. So I lied down, and, you know, I knew in my heart of hearts that my neck was broken. You know, I knew it. But, you know, you're in the forest and you've stacked the bike a heap of times, and you're asking yourself, well, is it really broken? Am I being silly here? I don't know. Maybe it's fine. Maybe I should try to get back on the bike. And all this stuff's going through your head. And I just thought to myself, nah, I'm going to ring, in our case, 000, which is the emergency number. So I actually reached into my own pocket and rang 000 myself. And in the end, yeah, paramedics were able to get to us in the forest, and I got rushed into hospital in Melbourne, actually. And then I had the halo installed after they did all the scans and worked out that it was in fact broken. I was so lucky to have no spinal cord damage. I've got to be absolutely one of the luckiest people on the planet, and that's not lost on me. I'm so grateful for my movement. And whenever I see someone who has been injured and hasn't had full movement restored, I just really feel so grateful. And
Right.
Injuries can impact people so heavily. And I think, you know, on the theme of disability and inclusion, you know, I learned a lot when I was in the halo. People do treat you differently. People do look at you differently. People don't include you as much because, for whatever reason, you know. So I think we've all got a lot more to do on the disability inclusion front.
Right.
But I had the full superstructure, the full halo. I walked every day. While I was in the halo, because sleeping in a halo is a shocker. Big metal structure. You've only got one position. The pressure of your head is on the screws when you lie down. So that's you for the night. So I adopted an approach where I basically walked about 20, 25 Ks a day, and then I was exhausted and I could just fall to sleep. Otherwise,
the pain, yeah.
Wow.
Then I'm back into it. You know, so lucky. I really got focused on my recovery, and I wanted to prove to myself that injury was not going to be, you know, peak Damian. In my mind, at least, I think the best is still yet to come with my riding and running, even though I'm getting older.
I think we all think that, right? The PB is yet to come, more than when we're in our 20s. Yeah. So do you? Obviously, I mean, yeah, that's one hell of a serious accident to have. So would you say now you're more cautious in riding, bearing in mind that you've got the scars to show for it, or are you equally going for every jump and trying to get PBs and everything still?
No, look, I still try to do things quickly, but I definitely have changed my riding style on the mountain bike. Definitely, I was always the one to, oh, can we do that drop? Can we hit that jump? Who's going to do it first? I'll do it. Let's see if we can do it. All that stuff. But I've definitely changed my riding style. I've got 2 small kids. I've got a beautiful, fantastic wife and family, and I got thinking a lot about that stuff and a lot about life, and without getting all hippie on everybody, right. I will say that you'd think a lot about what you've got and how lucky you are, and the responsibilities that you have. My parents, my dad, my mum, they meant a lot to me and the guidance they gave me. So I want to be able to be a good dad. And I'm not necessarily the world's best dad. I'm on a journey like we all are, but I want to be a good dad. And so, yes, I have toned it down a bit. I'm not going for all the big jumps I used to hit just routinely. I'm actually going on the beeline. And sometimes it hurts me to take the beeline. So for those of you that don't know, A line is the fastest, biggest, hardest line. The B line is, we used to call it the chicken run. So
you're now regularly doing the chicken run, right? Which is there's nothing wrong with that.
The B line. It's not the chicken run.
Well, thanks for sharing the story, Damian. And if I get a notification on Strava to see you're doing too many of the A runs, I'll have to the A lines. I'll have to ping you and kind of say, "Hey, careful, dude! Like, rein it in." But listen,
get back on the chicken.
Yeah, get back on the B. But listen, we're kind of at the past the gold mark of 30 minutes. So we appreciate you kind of taking the time out of your day to talk to us about some really important issues that I think we also just don't often get talked about, right? How many times have you heard a kind of water utility talk about what we've just talked about in the last half an hour? So I think really valuable insight and guidance for other kind of utility bosses out there. So we want to thank you for your time, and Will, any kind of closing thoughts, comments?
Yeah, 2 things. Damian, I believe I would work for you after the past 30 minutes of getting to know you and your perspective. The second is, really the people focus. It for me, it tends to get lost in the discussion of technology in general and digital transformation in particular. So again, thanks for really punching that one up. I think that's a lot of content to share.
Well, thanks very much for having me, and have a great day in Denver, Will, and have a great day, Tom, where you are in England. It's just amazing, this globally connected world, and thanks for your time.
Great stuff. All right, Damian. Thanks very much.
Damian. Be well.
No worries. Cheers.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.